Welcome to the Insights Hub Business Intelligence video series. The videos in this series will help you to understand how to use the application to get more out of your IoT data analysis. In this video, we will show some details on building a data source and opening it in a new workbook. The Insights Hub Business Intelligence application is an effective tool to build visual analytics and professional reports from your data sources on Insights Hub. Here in the Insights Hub Launchpad, we have the applications for business intelligence and business intelligence data. Business intelligence data is used to connect to Insights Hub data sources such as IoT time series, integrated data lake, or your Opcenter Intelligence data warehouse. These data sources are then published and made available to use in the business intelligence application. The customer receives both of these applications when they purchase the business intelligence subscription. But to use business intelligence data, the user must have the author role enabled in the settings. Opening business intelligence data, we can see a list of configured data sources. The symbol on the left shows the type of the data source. For example, time series assets, integrated data lake, time series asset types, and a query to Opcenter Intelligence data warehouse. Each item shows the status of the data source, when it was last updated, and the size of the update. We will create a new data source. We can select that we want a data source created from our IoT data, and we can select specific assets or all assets of a particular type. We can also create data sources from integrated data lake, either CSV or Parquet files, time series events, or Opcenter Intelligence queries. We will create a data source with asset type. We search for our asset type and select it. In this case, our asset type has 21 asset instances. We then select the individual variables from all aspects defined on that type. Here we'll select the production and electricity aspects. In this case, we don't need to include the quality codes. On to the next screen in the configuration, and we choose our update mechanism. We have the option of updating continuously, selecting the time window to include in the data source, for example, the last 24 hours, and the frequency that the data source is updated. The time series data source can contain up to 3 million data points depending on the update frequency. This value decreases for the faster update frequencies to ensure performance. In some use cases, it makes sense to override this limitation, and this option is provided below. In our case, we will make a data source with a fixed time range. These fixed time range IoT data sources can contain up to 30 million data points. We select our time period from the date range selector. We also have the option to use the aggregated data if the data source is too large. We give our data source a meaningful name and select a project for it. Then click Finish, and we can see that our data source is pending, waiting for its first synchronization. The business intelligence data application inherits all its permissions from the original data and Insights Hub, so you can be sure that only authorized users are allowed access to the data. Next, we can open the business intelligence application directly from the data source. Then we can create a workbook from the data source. We can create our first chart using the standard Tableau UI, simply dragging the variables of interest onto the sheet. Back in business intelligence data, we can now make a new data source from a file on Data Lake. We could also use a whole folder of Parquet files if needed, and the data source will be updated whenever a new file is added. Select Data Lake and navigate to our file location. We select a file called billofmaterials.csv. That includes all the static data associated with the parts being manufactured in our production asset. We can check that all the variables in the file are identified correctly with the appropriate data type. Again, we select a name for our data source and a project. Click Finish, and we can see that the resulting data source is pending. The synchronization should be very quick, and now our integrated data lake source is ready to use in the business intelligence application. If Opcenter Intelligence is installed on your environment, then you will also see this as a data source option. To build this data source, you start by selecting one of the Opcenter Intelligence data entities from the list. Here we select the Operation Response table. We can see the variables in this table, and we can preview the data. If we enable Advanced Query, then we have some options to join this with the other tables in the data warehouse. This is called an expand in the OData syntax. For example, we can expand with the site or equipment tables, adding them to the OData query shown below. The query options follow the OData standard and can be edited directly here. So you could add filter or select parameters, for example. Click Next, and we select our update frequency for the data source. Again, we save the new data source into a project, and it is ready to use in Business Intelligence. We've shown how the Business Intelligence Data app is used to build Tableau data sources from Insights Hub data. Business Intelligence Data manages all the synchronization and access control to this data so that you can focus on building stunning visualizations in the main Business Intelligence app.